Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Strong Collectors Podcast. I'm your host, Dakota, and today we're going to be talking about Mythic Legions. So this is kind of your beginner's guide. If there's seasoned veterans from the community, feel free to add in any information I forgot in the comments down below. Hopefully everybody can take a little something from here, a refresher for the veterans, and a lot of new information for people that are interested. So I got into Mythic Legions because I was enjoying my Marvel Legends. I was collecting McFarlane at the time. But I've always been interested in collecting like knights and fantasy type things, and that's exactly what Mythic Legions was to me. I didn't know a lot about the characters or the story behind it, but just the cool factor was off the charts. So we're going to go through some of the information about Mythic Legions. If you're curious about collecting them, hopefully this gives you a better understanding of what you might be getting into. First things first, if you are interested in Mythic Legions at all, I would highly recommend you go over to Facebook and you join the Mythic Legions Cabal. That's a Facebook group dedicated to all things Mythic Legions, Four Horsemen designs, all those kinds of things are going to be within that group. The people in there are probably the most welcoming of any action figure group on Facebook. So if you have questions that I don't answer today, put them in the Cabal, and there'll be so many people giving you tons of information. Great source. Also, just to see pictures of what people are picking up, popping and swapping, which we're going to talk about later, their photography, their dioramas. It's a lot of information and a lot of fun. So go join that first and foremost. Now, getting into Mythic Legions, we're going to mainly just cover Mythic Legions within this, but in order to talk about Mythic Legions, you kind of have to understand the umbrella that is Four Horsemen. So Four Horsemen is the company that makes Mythic Legions. They also make Cosmic Legions, which is very similar in design, or like it's still all compatible, which we're going to talk about later. But Mythic Legions is more of your fantasy knights, goblins, orcs, things like that. Cosmic Legions is going to be more space and sci-fi themed. Also, there's Figura Obscura, so that's more of your story-based things like your Krampus, your Headless Horseman, things like that. And then we're also, Four Horsemen is growing and branching out into even more. There's Infinite Legions, which is just starting. But for our main intents and purposes today, we're talking just Mythic Legions. If you want to know more about those other things, let me know if you need a Cosmic Legions for Dummies, etc. We can do that later. Now, in Mythic Legions, there are different scales, which to me is really fun in creating your displays. Everything the same size. To me, it can be cool still, but I like, with my Marvel Legends, I like having my regular figures. I like having my slightly bigger figures like Hulk. I like the Build-A-Figures a little bit bigger. The made-order things, HasLabs, there's different scales within the collection, so it kind of brings it all together a little bit more. Mythic Legions, very similar. We'll start out with the 1.0 figures. Now this is your most popular of any of the figures, or like the most figures are made in the 1.0 scale. So this is going to be your typical knights and orcs, kind of the like buffer armored up looks for the characters. That's what this is going to be. Now, there have been some improvements to the 1.0. So when we got the Valiant Knight, and a lot of figures from Necronominus on have used kind of an updated 1.0 base, it's still all very similar, but you're going to get, with those newer figures, a little bit more range of motion. Now we move over to 2.0. 2.0 is going to be more of your leaner, thinner characters. So thinking elves, some females, not all females. You've got your kind of wizard type, but not all wizards. A little bit more on the skinnier side. These are not compatible with the 2.0s because we're going to talk about popping and swapping. They're all compatible within themselves. 1.0s, most popular. 2.0s, a little less popular, but we've seen a lot more of those coming out recently. Then we get into 3.0s, which this is a newer thing that we don't actually have in hand yet, but we have a few figures that are on pre-order that will have this. This is even more articulated. These have double joints, some butterfly joints here. We're stretching the possibilities of articulation within Mythic Legions. We just don't have any of these in hand yet. Those are still to come, but you can pre-order them. Then we go to Brute Scale. Brute Scale, again, is a little bit more rare within Legions, but they're starting to come out. Brute Scale is, like I said, we're talking about scales. This is a little bit bigger than your regular 1.0. It's still going to be compatible with similar parts, but they're going to stand a little bit above those 1.0 figures. So things like that are going to be your Tharnog, bigger orc, and then you've also got Kalazir, and then some other figures that we have on pre-order, as well as other figures that have come out already too. That's kind of our regular-ish sized people. Now we're going to get a little bit bigger. The brute scale stands a little bit bigger than your 1.0s. The ogre scales are going to stand significantly bigger than your regular 1.0 knights. So think of your ogres, your half giants, things like that. There are even accessory packs specifically for this scale. We have some new, really cool, like bigger knights, which I'm really excited about. Then, before we get to the next scale, make sure you hit the like button if you enjoy what you're hearing. Also, share it with a friend. All those good things. They help us out a lot. Let's get to the next scale. If we want to keep going bigger past ogre scale, we have the trolls. Now, these are the biggest-ish of Mythic Legions. We're going to talk about the ish here in just a second, but these are going to be standing even larger than your ogres. These are not really meant for the popping and swapping that we're going to talk about in just a second. These figures are just kind of themselves. Maybe you can do a head swap, give them an accessory, give them a club, maybe switch out their loin pieces, but that's really about all you're going to do with these. These come out of the box, and they're a big, impressive kind of statement piece of Mythic Legions. Then we go to the biggest scale, and that's going to be the dragon. I don't know exactly what the technical scale for this is. I don't know if it's dragon scale, but this is massive. Like from flame to tail tip, it's almost 6 feet long. This was a made-to-order item, kind of similar to how a Kickstarter would be run. There had to be a certain amount reached. That was reached, so the dragon is being made currently, but we don't have it in hand yet. You can see some pictures from Legions Con and other conventions, but this is going to be your by far largest figure in the collection. Then we're going to go from the biggest down to not the smallest, but smaller than your regular 1.0 knights, and that's going to be your dwarves. So these are still on the 1.0 body, but they're smaller. So it's kind of like a 1.0/B category. Still similar, like arms, legs. The only difference here is the legs are obviously shorter because they're dwarves, but you can still do all the head swaps, the arm swaps with your other knights if you wanted to. Similar to how the dwarf is kind of a adjacent category to the 1.0, the goblins, for the most part, are an adjacent category to the 2.0. So again, goblins, smaller than your standard figure, also a little bit leaner. I said for the most part because there are also goblins that use the 1.0 body, but a majority of the goblins that we have in Mythic Legions are going to be on the 2.0 skinnier, leaner body type. Going even smaller than goblin, we have a brand new scale. This was just announced in the most recent wave, and that's imp scale. So you can see on the picture here the difference between your regular 1.0 and your imp scale. So these are significantly smaller, and we only have 2 figures right now on pre-order for this. So again, nothing in hand yet, but they're on their way currently in pre-orders. Speaking of pre-orders, if you want to pre-order any of your Mythic Legions from the newest wave, you can go over to gonewmeta.com, use code STRONG101. That'll get you 10% off your pre-orders. They also have $5 flat shipping if you're in the domestic US. Go check out Go New Meta for all the details. Go check out the new wave because there's some very cool things coming from Mythic Legions, and it's a great time to be getting into it. So we talked about the different scales of kind of your people in Mythos, but we also have mounts. So we talked about the dragon. The dragon is not a mount. The dragon is just a dragon. He doesn't get ridden. Some of the creatures in Mythos that do get ridden, you have the horses, and within the horse category, you can also include moose and unicorn. So these are, in my opinion, I think these are the best horse action figures you can get on the market right now. Also included in the mount category would also be the bears. So we have 2 bears currently on pre-order. These aren't in hand yet, but they're coming. We have the grizzly bear from the Rising Suns wave, and then we have the polar bear from the newest Horrors of Eisenhall wave, which again, on pre-order. You can get those at gonewmeta.com if you need them. But these are going to be, again, I still think probably the best bears that you can get in your 1/12 scale collecting. So not in hand yet, but on the way. So I've said a few times talking about compatibility between Mythic Legions within the 1.0s or the 2.0s. Now we're going to get into the popping and swapping. And I think for me, this is where my passion for Mythic Legions exploded, because I knew about, like, you know, you can head swap with your Marvel Legends or your G.I. Joes, and make it a different character. But with Mythic Legions, I think of them more in line with like Legos, where you can see from the picture here, you can pull your Mythic Legions apart in so many different ways, and all of those individual parts can be switched with other characters that are in those compatible size ranges. So like I said, 1.0 figures can mix with your 1.0 figures, 2.0s with 2.0s. There are some adapters that you can switch heads, but usually your 2.0 arms are not going to fit onto a 1.0 figure. But you are able to pull those pieces apart, reconfigure them how you like to, and you can create either new looks for characters that you have or create completely new characters and make them of your own design. And for me, that was where I liked Mythic Legions, and then I did pop and swaps, and then I loved Mythic Legions because I've always had that, I've had a creative itch that I'm not really great at painting or drawing, or I've never taken the time to get better at those things. But with Mythic Legions, I can pull some pieces apart, put them back together, and then I've created something of like what was in my mind, I now have in figure form. And to me, that's almost more fun than getting the figures out of the package. And by no means does that mean the figures coming out of the package is not great, but now I get to put my own twist on it. And I feel like I'm a little bit more invested because I helped create this figure that's now on my shelf. So that's super fun. If you haven't popped and swapped your figures yet, I highly recommend you just take one of your figures, sit down, pull it all apart, and put it back together. You're going to have the same figure at the end when you started, but then you'll have that more comfortability because, if you've never done this before, it feels like you're going to be breaking apart your figures, but these figures are meant to be taken apart and put back together. So sit down, take one apart, put it back together, and just get a feel for it, and then start switching in different armors. Start with a simple head swap, switch the feet, switch the torsos, put a cape here, there, completely new figure after you're done. I will say if you do need a little, like if things are not going back together or coming apart super easily, add a little bit of heat. I usually like hot water. Some people prefer like hair dryers, any sort of heat. I mean, obviously don't put them in the microwave. Not a great idea to do that. Don't do it. But hair dryer or hot water, I find the most success with hot water, but then you've got to dry them off and everything afterwards. So also don't do that with soft goods. Anyway, pop and swaps, those are great. We're even hosting a pop and swap competition, which I think if it's not our next episode, it'll be our episode following that, where we're going to have 4 different competitors. They're going to do various pop and swaps. So if this is new to you, it's going to be a great opportunity to learn the different levels because we're going to do this from the very basics of head swaps all the way up to free-for-alls where the competitors can use as many different parts as they want. And this is only going to be including Mythic Legion parts. So they're not allowed to use outside sources. They can't use customs. They can't paint things. These are all things you can take out of a Mythic Legion box, pop it apart, and put it back together, and you can make these creations that the competitor's going to be doing in the competition. So go check that out once it drops. So that was a lot of information on Mythic Legions itself, but now let's talk about actually collecting Mythic Legions. I think one thing that can be very intimidating for newer collectors is they look back at some of the older figures and they say, these are too expensive. Some of the figures go for $200, $300, $400. I can't be dropping that much money to build my collection. And to that, I say, appreciate those older figures. You can look at them, enjoy them from a distance, get them if you really feel like you need them. But for me, I leave those old figures in the past, and I'm looking more towards the figures that are coming out because Mythic Legions constantly coming out with new figures. And then this is an opinion, but I think their newer figures are far better than their older figures. They've had a lot of time to kind of perfect the craft, and the value that they're putting out in boxes currently is insane. I don't know how they pack so much into the boxes to begin with. And then for the price that they're at, I think you're getting an insane amount of value because a lot of them are coming with extra hands, extra heads, extra weapons, soft goods. And like I said, the articulation is getting better. If you look back at older releases, again, still very cool figures, but you would maybe get like a shield, maybe a sword, maybe a spear, and that would be all that was going to be packed into the box. Like I said, now with some of the newer figures, you're getting so many hands, multiple pieces of soft goods, maybe like a big, and even wired soft goods at that, not just fabric, but wired soft goods, magic effects, swords, shields, hammers, axes. Like I said, I don't know how they fit any more into the box. Great value. So again, if you get into Mythic Legions and there's one figure back a ways that you didn't pick up before you started collecting, You can always go back and get it. But I will also say Mythic Legions does do a really good job of re-releasing figures that are older. So they'll do things called All-Stars. So each year, usually they'll pick a few figures that are older, that haven't been made for a long time, that maybe are going higher in the aftermarket, and they'll put those out again the exact same way that they did before. They'll come with the same weapons, same accessories, and then you can get that at the current price. So rather than paying that $300, you can get it for the $50 or whatever retail is at that time. So again, don't go rushing out trying to collect all the old stuff. I would say start with the current stuff, start with current pre-orders, what's in stock right now, and then move forward. Another great thing about Mythic Legion collecting is their exclusives are usually exclusive for a certain amount of time, and then they're going to be released to everybody else. So think about things like the Valiant Knight. That was a Legions Con, kind of a surprise exclusive. We didn't know it was coming. They put it out. You could get it at Legions Con, and then over time, they brought it to other conventions. You could pick it up there, and you also had the opportunity to pick them up on the in-stock sale online. So anybody could get online, pick them up. You didn't have to spend that, whatever it was going for at the time, $100. You could get it for retail. Same thing with the current Barbarian is an exclusive. They said that they allocated half of their stock for the Barbarian for traveling conventions. So anytime they go to a convention, they're going to have it there, and you can pick it up there, kind of a reward for, seeing them in person. But at the end of the year, after they've done all the conventions, then they're going to have it available. That second half of their stock is going to be available online to anybody that wants to order it that way. So lots of different ways you can do that, even with their exclusives for, like they do the Headhunter, Zolo, I think it's ZoloCon is what that one's from. There may be some extra pieces in the exclusive, but then they're going to put that online. I think it's even in stock right now. So you might have like one less alternate head, maybe one less accessory, but you can still get your figure later on down the road. And it's not something that you have to track down. You don't have to spend those hundreds of dollars for a plane ticket to go to a convention to get your figure. And then when it comes to displaying your Mythic Legions, obviously the displays are all yours, but you can always do different ways within Mythic Legions of the factions. So you can dive into the story more, put the teams together. You can also display them by race. So you can have all of your orcs together. You can have all of your birds together. You can have all of the dwarves together, even though maybe they're on different factions. You can make up your own stories. Like I said, that's my favorite part about Mythic Legions. I like collecting my Marvel Legends. I know who Spider-Man is. I know who Magneto is, but their stories are pretty well established. Mythic Legions, each character has their bio. There's even a book being written right now. There's even short stories that you can read about Mythic Legions to get, to know your characters even more. To me, I love those stories. I love the bios. But when I get the figures, I almost put those to the side, and then I create my own stories within them, especially when I'm doing pop and swaps. I'm making my own completely new character, so then I'm going to make my displays completely my own. Even if there's a established bio for a character, I may say, I know this guy's a bad guy, canonly, but on my shelf, he's this other type of character. It's really a world of possibilities to get into. Make it your own. And if you enjoyed what we talked about today, you can go back and watch our episode talking to Jeremy Gerard, one of the head honchos over at Four Horsemen. You can also go back and watch some of the rankings that we've done to know kind of what figures I like. Maybe you'd like those too. Either way, make sure you're liking, sharing, and subscribing. And until next time, stay strong.